The scent of pine needles and damp earth filled my nostrils as our jeep rattled down the overgrown forest road. Camp Whispering Pines wasn't on any map, just a faded sign nailed to a rotting tree trunk. My friends Liam, Sarah, and Ben laughed. In the back seat, oblivious to the unease coiling in my gut. The trees leaned in, their branches scraping the roof like skeletal fingers. We pitched our tents near Blackwater Creek, its water dark and unnervingly still. Ben joked about mutant squirrels as we gathered firewood, but the forest felt ... watchful. That night, the flames cast dancing shadows that seemed too long, too twisted. Sarah screamed when something heavy crashed through the underbrush just beyond the firelight. We dismissed it as a deer, but sleep brought no peace. At 3 a.m., a guttural whisper slithered into my tent, so close I felt its breath on my neck. Leave now. I froze, heart hammering, until dawn stained the sky blood red. When I stumbled outside, 3 claw marks tore through Liam's tent flap. He swore it wasn't there last night. No one believed me about the voice. Chapter 2. The Whispering Day 2 bled into a suffocating twilight. The forest thickened, swallowing paths we'd cleared hours earlier. Sarah's compass spun wildly. It's just magnetic rock, Ben insisted, but his knuckles were white. We found the first shrine at noon, a ring of blackened stones encircling a deer skull draped in moss. Liam kicked it apart, laughing nervously. Kids messing around. But the air grew colder. That afternoon, Sarah vanished. We searched for hours, shouting her name until our throats burned. The woods echoed back, distorting our cries into something mocking. Near dusk, we found her backpack hanging from a high branch, shredded as if by knives. Inside, her water bottle was filled with thick, brackish liquid that smelled like decay. As darkness fell, the whispers began again, not just in my tent, but everywhere. A chorus of voices, some human, some not, overlapping in a language that scraped my bones. She's ours. You're next. Stay with us. We huddled around the fire. Rifles loaded, but the sounds moved around us, invisible. Ben's flashlight beam caught a shape tall, emaciated, melting between trees. He fired. The forest fell silent. Then came the laughter. Sarah stumbled into camp at sunrise. Her clothes were caked in mud, her eyes vacant holes. I saw them. She rasped. Old things, hungry things. She wouldn't say more. We packed frantically, but the Jeep's engine only coughed dead air. The battery was drained. Cables chewed through. Liam volunteered to hike to the main road 10 miles east. He never returned. That night, the temperature plummeted. Frost crawled up our tents. Ben sat by the fire, muttering prayers. Sarah rocked, silently staring at the woods. I saw them bend pale figures gliding between trees, their limbs too long, heads tilted at impossible angles. They mimicked our movements, a grotesque dance in the moonlight. Ben snapped. He ran screaming into the dark, his torch beam jerking wildly until it vanished. A wet, tearing sound echoed back. Sarah finally spoke. They want you to see. I grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the creek. The whispers became screams, shaking. The leaves. Behind us, the undergrowth erupted. Not animals. Not human. Glimpses of bone-white skin, black eyes reflecting no light. We plunged into the icy water, wading downstream until our legs gave out. Dawn found us stumbling onto a logging road, where a trucker picked us up, swearing we looked half dead. At the police station, they dismissed our story missing persons, forest hallucinations. But when they searched the campsite, they found no trace of Ben or Liam. Just 3 clawed tents ... and Sarah's backpack, now holding a bundle of rotted twigs shaped like a human spine. Sarah stopped speaking altogether. I hear the whispers still, late at night, under the sound of rain. They're softer now, but persistent. We know where you sleep. Sometimes I see them at the edge of my suburban street, tall shadows where trees shouldn't be, waiting, patient. They always find those who heard them call. The forest doesn't forget. In some campsites, they choose you back. The crunch of gravel under tires faded as Alex killed the engine. We'd arrived deep in Blackwood Forest, a place maps hinted was vast and largely uncharted. Sunlight filtered thickly through ancient pines, dappled the mossy ground. It was beautiful, serene, too serene. Home, sweet, creepy home for the weekend, Ben announced, slamming the trunk shut, his usual bravado echoing slightly too loud in the quiet. Maya, ever the nature enthusiast, was already scanning the tree line with binoculars, murmuring about rare birds. Alex, practical as always, started. Unloading tents. I helped pitch camp near a small, unnaturally still clearing. The air felt heavy, damp. The usual forest sounds, bird song, rustling leaves, seemed muffled, distant, like the woods were holding their breath. As dusk bled into night, the crackle of our campfire felt like a tiny, defiant spark against an immense, watchful darkness. The silence pressed in, not peaceful. Waiting. The next morning, the unease lingered like a bad taste. We decided to hike to a creek marked on Alex's old topographic map. The path was overgrown, the trees leaning closer, their branches like gnarled fingers. The cheerful badger from yesterday died out, replaced by labored breathing and the unsettling crunch of unseen things underfoot. We found the creek, or rather, what was left of it. A thin, oily trickle oozed over black rocks between crumbling concrete slabs, ruins of some forgotten structure. The water smelled faintly metallic, wrong. Guess the map needs updating, Ben joked, but his voice lacked its usual warmth. He nudged a moss-covered concrete block with his boot. Underneath, something pale gleamed. A bone, too long, too thin to be an animal's. Human? A wave of icy air washed over us, unrelated to the shaded spot. Maya gasped, her breath frosting, visibly in the suddenly frigid air. We all felt it, a deep, penetrating cold that seeped into our bones. Panic flickered in Alex's eyes. Back to camp, now. The hike back was a blur of stumbling haste. The woods felt different, hostile. The trees seemed to shift subtly when I looked away. Twice, I thought I saw a tall, impossibly thin shadow flitting between trunks, just beyond my peripheral vision. The disappearance and the WHBEN vanished that night. One moment he was tending the fire, complaining about the pervasive damp chill that the flames couldn't touch. The next, he was simply gone. No cry, no struggle, no sound of footsteps. Just absence. Ben? Ben. Alex's shouts were swallowed by the oppressive silence. Maya clutched my arm, her nails digging in, her face ghostly pale in the firelight. We searched frantically around the camp perimeter with flashlights, beams, slicing erratically through the pitch black. Our calls echoed back at us, distorted and mocking. That's when the whispers started, not from any one direction, but everywhere. From the rustling leaves above, the sighing wind that wasn't blowing, even from the ground beneath our feet. Indistinct at first, like dried leaves skittering on stone, then clearer, fragments of words. Stay. One seemed to breathe. ... lost ... hissed, another ... cold ... The voices weren't human. They were ancient, dry, filled with a hollow hunger that made my blood freeze solid. Alex heard them too. I saw the terror etched on his face. Maya started chanting something low under her breath, a protective charm or a prayer. We huddled back by the dying fire, backs pressed together, flashlights pointed outward like weapons. Sleep was impossible. The whispers coiled around us, probing, insistent. Shapes moved just beyond the ring of light, tall, impossibly thin, shifting like smoke between the trees. Watching, waiting for the fire to die. Asterisk, asterisk, chapter 4. The edge and dawn brought no comfort, only a gray, mist-choked light. That did nothing to dispel the dread. Ben was still gone. The whispers had subsided with the light, but the sense of being hunted remained, a physical pressure. "We have to get out," Alex stated, his voice tight with fear barely held in check. The car, now. We abandoned everything except our flashlights. And a desperate hope. The woods resisted us. Familiar landmarks were gone. Paths we'd taken yesterday twisted into unfamiliar dead-end thickets. The mist clung, damp and cold, muffling sound and sight. The whispering began again, louder now, more insistent. Asterisk, mine ... stay forever. ... join us. ... and panic set in. We ran, stumbling over roots, branches whipping in our faces. Maya screamed, falling behind. I turned, just in time to see a cluster of those impossibly thin, shadowy figures detach from the mist near her. They moved with terrifying speed, like spiders skittering. Maya's scream cut off abruptly, swallowed by the mist and the hungry whispers. Alex grabbed my arm, hauling me forward. "Don't look back, run!" We burst through a final wall of dripping ferns and stumbled onto a steep, rocky slope overlooking a mist-filled ravine. The car was nowhere in sight. We were utterly lost. Below, the mist writhed. Shapes moved within it, tall, thin, countless. And rising from the depths, carried on the cold air, were the whispers. But now, mixed with the ancient, hungry voices, I heard others. Fragmented, terrified, familiar. Ben's choked gasp. Maya's final, pleading sob. Alex met my eyes, raw despair etched on his face. The whispers surged around us, a cacophony of hunger and stolen voices. The mist below began to rise, creeping up the slope like cold fingers. There was nowhere left. To run, the forest had won. It always had. The last thing I heard, as the icy mist closed over us and the shadow figures emerged from the trees, was my own voice, stolen and added to the chorus, whispering from the hungry green silence. Asterisk, double quotes, ... lost, ... The fading autumn sun bled through the skeletal branches of Blackwood Forest, casting long, grasping shadows across the overgrown path. My shortcut, a desperate attempt to shave an hour off the journey home, now felt like the worst decision of my life. The cheerful crunch of leaves underfoot from the road had given way to an oppressive silence, broken only by the unnerving rustle of something moving just out of sight in the thickening undergrowth. An unnatural chill, far deeper than the October evening warranted, seeped into my bones. I checked my phone again. No signal. The comforting glow of the screen only emphasized the encroaching darkness beyond its small circle of light. Panic, cold, and sharp began to prickle at the back of my neck. The map app was useless here, the path I thought I knew dissolving into a confusing tangle of gnarled roots and identical looming trees. That's when I heard it, a low, guttural growl, vibrating through the stillness like a physical thing. It came from my left, deep within a curtain of thorny bushes. It wasn't the growl of a bear or a wolf I knew from nature documentaries. This was different, hungrier, more intelligent. And it was answered almost immediately by another, then another, from slightly different directions, slowly encircling. My breath hitched. Sweat, cold despite the chill, slicked my palms. I fumbled for the small pocket knife on my keychain, its tiny blade suddenly ludicrously inadequate. The growls intensified, morphing into a chorus of deep-throated snarls. and the sickening sound of jaws snapping. Then I saw them. Eyes, not the reflective shine of an animal caught in a light beam, but a dull, malevolent lantern glowing faintly from the gloom between the trees. 3 pairs, then 5. Too many. They moved with an unnatural fluidity, shadows, detaching themselves from the greater darkness, low to the ground, but horrifyingly large. These weren't dogs. Not really. Their forms were canine, yes, but distorted, stretched too thin over hunched shoulders and powerful haunches. Their fur was patchy, revealing slick grayish skin beneath, and their muzzles were elongated, filled with jagged yellow teeth that gleamed weightily in my phone's dying light. Worst of all was the intelligence burning in those red eyes, a chilling, predatory awareness that saw me not just as prey, but as an intruder in their domain. A high-pitched whine escaped my throat as I stumbled backward, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The largest creature, its head easily level with my waist, took a deliberate step forward, its lips peeling back in a silent snarl. The hunt had begun. Chapter T, WTHROUGHRENLINE, pure and primal, flooded my veins. Survival instinct screamed louder than the rising chorus of snarls. I turned and ran, not along the vanished path, but blindly into the densest part of the forest, hoping the thick trunks and tangled brush would slow them down. Branches whipped at my face and arms, leaving stinging welts. Roots snagged at my ankles, threatening to send me sprawling. Behind me, the sounds of pursuit exploded, the crashing of heavy bodies through the undergrowth, the terrifying speed of their approach, punctuated by sharp barks that sounded more like screams than any dog I'd ever heard. I dared a glance back. They flowed through the trees like liquid shadow, unnervingly silent except for the panting breaths that seemed to rasp like sandpaper. Their movements were coordinated, some flanking me, others closing in directly. Their red eyes were fixed, unwavering points of malevolent light in the deepening twilight. The stench hit me then, a thick, coppery odor mixed with decay and wet fur, a smell that turned my stomach and fueled my terror. I veered sharply around a massive oak, its gnarled roots forming a partial barrier. I heard a frustrated yelp as one of the creatures slammed into it, a small victory. I pushed harder, lungs burning, legs screaming in protest. Ahead, I spotted a cluster of enormous boulders, slick with moss, piled precariously against a steep, muddy bank. With a desperate surge, I scrambled towards them, slipping and clawing my way up the mud. My fingers found purchase on cold, wet stone. I hauled myself onto the highest boulder just as the first creature lunged, its claws scraping against the rock inches below my dangling foot. It snapped its monstrous jaws, a spray of hot, foul saliva hitting my leg. The others gathered below, pacing, red eyes glowing like embers in the gloom, their frustrated growls vibrating through the stone beneath me. I was trapped, perched like a terrified bird, the boulders my only fragile sanctuary. Their intelligence was undeniable. They knew I couldn't stay up here forever. They could wait. The cold seeped deeper as night truly fell. The moon, a thin, pale sliver, offered little light. Below, the pack maintained their vigil. 5 sets of red eyes circled the base of the rocks, occasionally letting out low, rumbling growls that seemed to shake the very air. My perch was precarious, the rock cold and unforgiving. Exhaustion warred with terror. My phone battery icon blinked red, then died, plunging my immediate surroundings into near-total darkness. Only the faint moonlight and the hellish glow of the creature's eyes remained. Despair threatened to drown me. Waiting meant succumbing to cold, exhaustion, or eventually falling into their waiting jaws. I had to move, scanning the darkness beyond. The boulders, I remembered the faint, distant sound I'd heard earlier during my frantic run. the rush of water. A river? Hope, fragile but fierce, sparked. If I could reach it, maybe the current could carry me away. Maybe they wouldn't follow into deep water. Gathering the last dregs of my courage, I focused on the direction of the sound. The creatures sensed my shift in attention. The largest one, the leader, let out a sharp, commanding bark. They tensed. Taking the deepest breath I could manage, I launched myself sideways off the boulder, not down towards them, but along the steep, muddy bank parallel to the river's sound. I hit the slope hard, sliding and tumbling in a chaotic descent, mud filling my mouth and nose. Chaos erupted below. Snarls and barks filled the night as the pack scrambled to intercept my desperate gamble. I rolled, scrambled, and half ran, half fell down the incline, guided only by the increasingly loud roar of water. Thorns ripped at my clothes, branches slacked me, but I kept moving, driven by pure terror. I burst through a final wall of brush and stumbled onto a rocky bank. The river. It was wider and swifter than I'd hoped, black water churning under the weak moonlight. Without hesitation, driven by the crashing sounds of pursuit mere feet behind, I plunged into the icy torrent. The cold was a physical blow, stealing my breath. The current seized me immediately, pulling me downstream. I fought to keep my head above water, gasping, kicking weakly. I looked back. On the bank, the creatures had skidded to a halt. They paced the edge, red eyes burning with frustrated fury, their snarls echoing over the water's roar. The largest. One took a tentative step into the shallows, then recoiled with a yelp as the current tugged at its legs. They wouldn't follow. Not into this. The freezing water numbed my terror, replacing it with a desperate fight for survival against the rivers. Pull. I was battered against rocks, swallowed by icy water, but the sight of those hateful red eyes receding into the darkness as the current swept me away was the sweetest relief I'd ever known. I didn't know where the river would take me, or if I'd even survive the journey, but I had escaped the whispering woods and the things that weren't dogs. The memory of their glowing eyes and the stench of decay, however, would forever haunt the edges of my nightmares, a chilling reminder of the true terrors hidden within the world's forgotten shadows. The forest had whispered, and I had barely survived its dark secret.